Welcome back to LimQ Plus, everyone. On this channel, I'm 100%ing Breath of the Wild by a bit every day until the sequel Tears of the Kingdom comes out, which is today in 84 days. I recently watched a video that I kind of want to comment on today, and that video was about Breath of the Wild's graphics compared to Tears of the Kingdom graphics. I say this all the time. To me, Breath of the Wild is the best looking Switch game aesthetically. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Odyssey actually is a more polished and cleaner game. But for aesthetically, for my preference in terms of aesthetics, this is my favorite looking game on the Switch. Some people refer to Xenoblade, especially Xenoblade 3, which I can see that. It's not quite my preference when it comes to looks. But I can definitely see how people would say that's the best looking Switch game. I think this game, still to this day, is, for my preference, the most aesthetically pleasing. I agree with the video that I watched, which essentially pointed out that Tears of the Kingdom actually does, in fact, look even better than Breath of the Wild. And I went back to pay a little bit more attention to some of the details when you compare the two games. And I must say I have to agree even more now. I think one thing that Breath of the Wild is kind of known for, and this is actually funny because I obviously play the game on original hardware, I play the game on Nintendo Switch. This is the only way you are allowed to submit your speedruns to the leaderboard, right? And the one thing that this game is almost known for is kind of like this white grain. If you look at my screen right now, it's almost like there's a white cloud in front of Link at all times. If you actually have ever tried to make a thumbnail for Breath of the Wild, maybe you wanted to make a YouTube video, this white grain has definitely bothered you before. It definitely makes it so that pictures that you take from within the game don't have their colors pop out that much, and it can actually be a little bit more annoying to edit with when it comes to actually thumbnail making. A lot of people, some of the biggest Breath of the Wild YouTubers I know, and me included, sometimes we take screenshots from an emulator just for a thumbnail to actually get a little bit more color in. That white grain, while not completely gone, at least in the footage for Tears of the Kingdom's trailers, seems to be mostly gone. If you compare Tears of the Kingdom footage with Breath of the Wild footage, the one thing that really stands out is that it seems like the colors are now a lot more popping. They pop out much more. I think the best shots to consider for that are shots of Link basically being very high up in the sky. I've recently, and let me know if I can actually find this clip for you, just to give you a little bit more reference. I've recently gotten the moon jump glitch, right? To compare one of the shots from the Tears of the Kingdom trailer with the Breath of the Wild trailer. And look at this. This is exactly what I mean. I'm up here, moon jumping up. This is actually a comparison that I made to a shot of Link standing on one of the Sky Islands. In the shot of Link standing on the Sky Islands, there's actually some clouds around in the overworld so that you can see the Bridge of Hylia, like you can see here, or even the Colosseum. And Gerudo Town, you can actually see it in the middle right, is unloaded in this case because this game doesn't always load everything in. But what I mean is this white grain that you can essentially see over the entire screen. Obviously, the Tears of the Kingdom trailers could potentially have been edited so that white grain is not as apparent, but I honestly don't think so because it does seem like gameplay footage, and these sort of shots have to look better now because these sort of views in Breath of the Wild were not intended, right? You were not supposed to be able to see something like this. You were not supposed to be able to go this high. I did it with Moon Jump in this case, but in Tears of the Kingdom, you are supposed to be up here. There's going to be a Sky Island here under Link's feet. So it makes sense that this is something they've actually tried to optimize and improve on. And given the fact that Breath of the Wild was already possible in 2017, and even though the Switch hardware is relatively lacking and relatively behind, they were already so good with basically using a bunch of tricks to make the game look even better than other games normally do on Switch, that I think over time they were able to do it even better. And I think you can actually see that already in the Tears of the Kingdom footage that we have. Now, before I continue talking about this a little bit more, I don't think I've gotten a single Korok yet. I have to focus on this next Korok. This, in the 100% speedrun, has been one of the infamous ones for me to get. It's extremely hard to find. I'm honestly always curious how people found this one casually. I'm curious. You're about to see which one I mean. Maybe some of you remember getting this Korok. and can tell me how you actually found it, because I am surprised that people even found it in the first place. It should be next to another one of those bridges that I first have to find. Not having the mini-map here makes this definitely even harder than it usually is. And then it's up on the other side of a river, inside of one of the trees. It's one of those balloon Koroks. I'll see how long it takes me to find this time. But, yeah, I think when I took a closer look to Tears of the Kingdom's trailers, which obviously I've done, this is the bridge I was talking about, by the way. I think it's very, very easily... Oh, wow. Oh, so this... Okay, wait. I just realized... I guess when you play the game casually, it's not that bad. The Korok I'm talking about is the balloon over there, right? It's just that when you actually speedrun, let's try to get a little bit of a trick shot here. I think this one is gonna work. Close, close. This one is gonna work. Come on. There you go. I guess when you play the game casually, it's easier to find. This is the one I was talking about. When you speedrun, you actually approach this bridge from, like, this side. And it's almost impossible to see the balloon, especially when you're trying to go fast. Also, this bridge is obviously a location. We have now reached 69% as well, so that is nice. Now, again, that white grain being gone, it has become so much more apparent to me now that I've tried to actually compare Tears of the Kingdom frame by, not necessarily frame by frame, but I tried to basically go to locations from Breath of the Wild that are also in Tears of the Kingdom. And if you look on a side-by-side comparison, I think it's evident that there has been some work done on the game's visuals, especially when it comes to the colors. I obviously have no idea when it comes to the frame rate, right? This is something that was not evident in Breath of the Wild trailers, that in some areas of the game it would obviously run quite poorly. That's not something that you would include in your trailer, obviously. And that's not something that has really bothered me ever in this game, which is interesting. Usually performance to me is much, much more important than any, like graphics in general, right? I don't care about textures necessarily as much, or like shadows, but what I really do care about is that the game runs smoothly. Thankfully, if you really think about it, like right now, this is like your typical Breath of the Wild gameplay. You're running around, you're exploring things. Performance don't usually bother you, it's not really an issue in this sort of gameplay. It's only really an issue in some specific areas, for example, in the wetlands, where there's a lot of water reflections. In Kakariko, it's very known, because you spend a lot of time in Kakariko. And obviously, probably the most known one is Korok Forest. That's where the game really tanks. There's a lot of, like, light reflection and stuff going on, so it makes sense to me why this is the case. But it's definitely evident, and I think it has almost become a meme for the most laggy location in Breath of the Wild, but it didn't really bother me, and it still doesn't. So I'm actually fairly confident that even if Tears of the Kingdom runs exactly like Breath of the Wild, I'm gonna be happy, right? But I think there's actually a chance that it's gonna run even better, and that's very exciting to me. The thing is, at the end of the day, some people, I think, at this point, still, which I think is crazy, are thinking that maybe there's gonna be a new console for Tears of the Kingdom coming out. I really don't know how that's supposed to be possible. I guess Nintendo could randomly announce one next week, and suddenly everyone potentially pre-orders that console, but I highly doubt it. I think that dream is, unfortunately, mostly dead. But, I mean, I guess one can hope. I don't think we need it. I am personally, unfortunately, really tempted to potentially get my hands on that Tears of the Kingdom themed OLED Switch, which I really don't need. Don't get me wrong, I really don't need it at all. But it looks pretty cool and I love this game. So, I'm gonna consider maybe splurging on that one, even if it's just a collector's item, even though I'm usually not a big collector. My point is, I think... And this is essentially the video title that I saw online. I think Tears of the Kingdom's graphics are even better than we think right now. If you compare them 1-to-1 with Breath of the Wild, it looks like there's a very noticeable... there's a very noticeable performance difference. No, performance difference, visual difference. Again, if you see stuff like this sometimes, you probably ask yourself, why does he not heal? Is he blind? And I used to not be blind, but because in speedruns nowadays we have basically infinite fairies, sometimes I just ignore my health, which is not a good habit, because those infinite fairy glitches will definitely, or at least most likely, not exist in Tears of the Kingdom. So hopefully I can use my eyes again in the future. Before I do this balloon Korok seed, I will end today's episode because this one sucks. So next episode will probably start with a 1-minute section of getting these balloons. But anyway, Tears of the Kingdom comes out in 84 days. I'm now going to be pre-recording the videos for the next 4 days because I'm going to be gone on the weekend. But thank you for watching today again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.